Hello YouTube, I hope that everyone is doing well. Let's include this addition into my Get Real series. Here, I do not self-censor. Here, I am not responsible for your reaction to my commentary. This communicative effort is without script, nor will it be edited. We can talk as I drive to the airport. I will upload this during my first layover. All respectfully presented dissenting views are always encouraged. Comment as you see fit. Okay, let's get the music started. Indeed, there is dysfunction everywhere. However, when someone is similar to us, let's consider phenotypical traits. It is assumed racial or ethnic similarities, generally speaking, may assist us to make fairly accurate predictions about this person. Common cultural knowledge and general demographic information aside, this is where it begins and ends. Many justifications can be provided when one behaves poorly. However, reported shared preferences and mistakenly believed common values should not be accepted without verification or proof when one is observing someone or taking one's character into consideration. Obviously, when we encounter people who are like us, phenotypically speaking, but who we find verminous or fantastical, it becomes easy to comprehend why we would have an intense distaste for this similarity. Now, I will admit that my attitude can conform to part of the research you may find if you were to explore the authors Cooper and Jones from a 1969 article titled Opinion Divergence as a Strategy to Avoid Being Miscast. You would find this within the publication Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, Volume 13, pages 23 through 30, if my memory stands to be correct, and also an article by Taylor and Mettee, spelled capital M-E-T-T-E. I believe that article was written in 1971, the same journal, Volume 20. And the name of that particular article is When Similarity Breeds Contempt. I do think if you turn to page 75 of that journal, that the article starts there and extends to page 81. Yeah, I think that's correct. So, we can see that it is not out of the ordinary to have dislike for similar but offensive people, even more than offensive but distinctly different people. This said, where it gets out of hand is when self-hate influences, discernment is absent, groupthink rules and integrity is shadowed by aggression due to one's inability to manage high testosterone levels or emotional immaturity. Hence, my disdain for certain dysfunctional behavior in blacks can on occasion dwarf my lack of respect for racist and other miscreants. Now, we as individuals have a right to behave in the manner we select. This does not remove us from consequences resulting from said behavior. Recently, I made a brief appearance on a talk show I called in where a guest, previous to my appearance, behaved poorly. Some answered his behavior by being beyond socially incorrect. No, economic hardships or social restrictions was not the cause of their reply. By the way, this is never a valid reason for such displays. However, one of the co-host and or fellow guest, not exactly sure what his position was, decided the best way to handle the situation was to rip into this individual. Speaking of the one who appeared before I did. Not dissecting the behavior ideas expressed and maybe chasing that with a classy rebuke. No, no. he resorted to vile displays which enforced many stereotypical labels for blacks. Of course, the use of the word nigger was exuberant. When I announced my unwillingness to co-sign such exhibition, I was falsely labeled as being a supporter of the opposition. My action was taken as an attack of him versus attacking his behavior. Big difference. Typical, however, and mentally lazy we humans can be. I addressed him because 1, his behavior was counterproductive. 2, it was yet another deposit into the cesspool of negativity. 3, I was in opposition to his brain-sick justification. You see, he justified his selection of language, obviously constructed with the intent to hurt, shame, and ostracize, was the only way he could effectively express himself. 4, you can't be in a position to help a group, yet quickly show your willingness to tear down a member of that group. 5, his behavior was a testament for the need of us versus them dynamics. There was no sincere attempt to even find a place of agreement, which could have at least provided a positive launching pad that could result it into something that was meaningful, a meaningful exchange, even if disagreement still existed. It was apparent emotion, not reason, got the better of him. Frankly, I think the anger towards me surfaced partly because my opposition exposed his weaknesses, something other men might discover. After I disengaged, I began to think about the utility cost of poor communication skills. How much better it would have been if he selected to remove communication barriers or even simply request for termination of the interaction. How we feel about the subject matter, the people we encounter, and ourselves affects the accuracy of our messages. Regrettably, not having a handle on personal frustration only contributes to poor attempts to address issues. Speaking from a place of anger fosters negative feelings in the audience. This is very important to know if the goal is to generate an analysis into clear-cut components, thereby solving a source or the sources of difficulty. It is important to put feelings aside in order to communicate effectively. Feelings are important, but as I witnessed, feelings adds to the density of the challenge. Also, the use of certain hot buttons, let's call them hot buttons, such as issues, words, and personality differences, will cause people to prejudge or contort a message. This is why it is mandatory to identify and control these personal hot buttons. When the group that has gathered to make positive changes does not behave mostly in positive ways, it weakens the development of said goal. Admittedly, my failure was not considering my source. I am not speaking of all, but there appeared to be an undercurrent of mob mentality present. The experience was remarkably poignant and powerful for me. What made this even more tragic was I supported the general mission, which is to improve the overall atmosphere on the internet via certain social media sites like YouTube as it regards the so-called Black community, and to hold Google feet to the fire as it pertained to consistency. regarding their rules that all of us supposedly have to follow. But as I was going to share, what made this even more tragic was the obvious link this person made to their behavior and manhood. This for me was a micro-reflection of America's former lust for exaggerated masculinity and a sneak peek into America's violent core. So, knowing this ahead of time, it would have been better had I kept silent, pearls before swine type of reasoning. Or, to approach it differently, hindsight is 2020. This said, also my efforts lacked effectiveness because it came across as judgment. Admittedly, I wanted the person that I was addressing to know how sickened I was by his behavior, how inappropriate his behavior was for multiple reasons. However, this, in some people's eyes, equates the critique to a non-constructive diatribe. This set aside, each group has the potential to have their share of contemptible and despicable individuals. Reflection and paraphrasing will not help facilitate feedback and prevent miscommunication with these sorts. Listen carefully. Reflecting back to the speaker and paraphrasing what was said tells them that you, the one who is attempting to effectively communicate, understands the message. Admittedly, it would be best if done without judgment, inference, or persuasion. Simply echoing the words of another prevents misunderstandings before it starts. This is assuming the person that you are addressing is rational and exhibits emotional maturity. If so, this is an easy yet effective tool for providing feedback. Some say there is a Negro script. I do think that some blacks have a litmus test, one they attempt to give in determining your level of blackness. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. That just kills me for so many reasons, and philosophical at that. We will have to get into that at a later time. Those who prescribe to low-life pursuits can infect a group. How is this so, you may ask? Well, a human group which is infected has one or several insiders, which gets its sustenance from the group or that which interacts directly with this group. It colonizes that group and reproduces inside of the unit. The group with that pathogen inside is the host, while the pathogen is appropriately seen as a parasitic organism or an infectious agent. I suggest we quarantine them. Unity is only beneficial if the group is composed of quality individuals, or at least those not willing to sabotage the mission. Venomous language to express bitter, deep-seated ill will is a typical device of those contaminated with groupthink. The infectious agent could be a carrier of toxins, let's say, or it could simply be a pre-existing disease. It could function in this way, this individual, a pre-existing disease that infiltrates the group. We see it within unions, gang members, political units, and professional sports teams. I urge we indefinitely suspend the lowlifes from our reality. They do not want to contribute to healthy outcomes. They want to feed off the host or any who selects to rationally discriminate against them. When in racial or ethnic groups, they act like racial corporatists. So I am suggesting they practice a sort of racial collectivism that views the whole as being greater than the sum of its individual parts. This translates well into different realities. Beware, beware. If you disagree, they shield themselves with personal attacks as he or she poses. Of course, this display is at the cost of other individuals.